Today it's finally time to have a look at one of the classic remakes this year, Nosferatu. The main focus will be on the look today, so we're gonna have a look at lighting, color palettes, camera gear, and a little bit of costume design. In the end, we're also gonna have a look at my favorite shots of the film. They're all super cool, but more of that later. First of all, what camera did they shoot this film on? Nosferatu was shot on a 35mm film camera. Specifically, they shot it on the Aricam ST. Jarin Blaschke, the director of photography of the movie, used vintage Baltar lenses from the 1930s in this movie to have a little bit of this old retro look. They also used custom-made ultra-fast Panavision optics with f/0.9, good luck Mr. Focus Puller, to shoot the whole thing at actual night. On film, by the way. The Panavision optics were also matched, so they look exactly or close to the Baltar lenses that they used. For all the aspect ratio nerds, this film was shot on 1.66:1. The variety of the shots can all be categorized into 3 color palettes. The orange and warm shots, the blue and tealy shots, and the daylight balance shots. Let's just start with the blue ones. Most of the scenes we will analyze now are actually night scenes. And to make the night scenes as realistic as possible, they used a very special filter. This filter is called a scotopic filter, and it essentially emulates what the human eye can see during the night. When you look around at night, your eyes don't see color. That's why everything is desaturated. But in addition to this desaturation, you also can't see red and orange tones. And that is exactly what this filter is emulating. Let's have a look how this looks in practice. This whole bluish and teal lighting you can find all over the movie. Usually it's with a strong backlight, like in this scene, where they just put like a light behind the actors, outside of the window. The same technique is used in this scene. Orlok is staying on this window with like a green screen behind him, so they can VFX some landscape into that later. And in this whole green screen sequence, we can see 3 layers of light in total. The chroma key lights to light the green screen in the background, a spotlight just in front of Orlok, the actor, which I assume they also mounted on the ceiling, and that is acting as a fill light in this situation. And once again, the teal ambient light coming in from a position that is more behind the camera. So it's spilling into the scene, but it's not directly noticeable unless they push out. Most of the time, bluish tones are reserved for extremely moody and scary night scenes, which makes sense as they probably used this scotopic filter. Here are 2 of the most famous ones, the castle shot and the crossroad shot. For this castle scene, they had a very strong light at the mountain on the top right corner when you look from the camera view. You can see in this behind the scenes footage that they flagged it completely, so there's no light from this specific light hitting the camera, so there are no flares. A little fun fact, the wolves and horses are actually real, but they couldn't use them at the same time for obvious reasons, and that's why the final shot is combed from 2 different takes. Which light they used exactly is not seeable here, but it has to be a hell of a strong light to light this whole area. If you look closely, and Jarin Blaschke also pointed that out, the shadows are not falling into the right direction, but nobody cares, I guess. The crossroads scene, in my opinion, is the most beautiful shot of the movie. It's just insane. Like when I saw this in the cinema, I was going a bit nuts, to be honest. They mostly lit this by using 2 Arrimax 18Ks as a top backlight and also an additional balloon overhead light that is boosting the levels on the floor in front of him and in general, like in the whole scene. That's why it has this circular light area on the floor. Additionally, there is a very strong backlight behind the character, giving this ambient bright spot in the back. In general, I would say that silhouettes are something that Blaschke seems to like a lot. Whether it's lit by daylight like this scene or with simulated moonlight on the soundstage, where they primarily, by the way, use specialized mirrors to increase the apparent distance between the lamp and the character, because the moon is usually very far away, so they had to make sure that in the limited space that they had in the studio, they could actually emulate the distance from the lamp to the character. It's crazy to see that they are just barely not underexposing in most of the scenes. Like in this Orlok shot, for example, he's like standing in complete darkness, and I think it's just a single key light outside of the window shining into his face. It just makes it look dramatic as hell. It's super cool. Blaschke really likes to work in low light, and he's known to push the limits of low exposure, which we've already seen in the bluish scenes. But in this movie, he also filmed a lot of the orange scenes with real fire and real candlelight, which by itself is already a huge challenge with digital cameras, but I cannot even imagine shooting that on film. I think you need a lot of experience, and you gotta make sure that your exposure levels are really correct if you don't wanna end up wasting a whole shooting day. This is only possible because they used custom super fast Panavision lenses with f/0.9, which is extremely wide open. Super fast basically means that there's more light reaching the sensor to expose the picture in low light scenarios correctly. Because if you don't do that, the whole picture gets very grainy, and if you shoot on film, it just looks horrible and it's absolutely unusable. What is really interesting in these orange and warm scenes is the placement of the lights. Although most of them are actually practicals, they also are functioning as key and fill lights in different scenarios. In this shot, for example, you can see that a few more candles are placed on the left side of the face, while they kept 3 candles as practicals in the background. And that's shaping a cool contrast in the overall image and Orlok's face. And here again, we see a silhouette shot by a gigantic fireplace light in the background of the table, and it just looks super cool. Throughout the movie, the light sources change. It can be a torch, a lantern, or a practical light lighting the actors. Look how they're always positioned in a way that achieves contrast in their faces. Either it's in between the actors, like in this shot, or it's functioning as a key light from the right side of the face, or sometimes even from underneath the actor, like in this shot. For these orangey outdoor scene, they are bouncing some HMIs with gels into a reflective frame. So yeah, we can clearly see that they have a few lights in the back and a diffusion frame on the right side of the frame. So we can kind of constitute that almost all warm and orangey scenes are lit by practical lighting. The daylight balance scenes are also special, because I feel like they almost mimic a colorful black and white image, if that makes sense at all. The color palette is just massively restricted. They use black, white and brownish tones, and that's about it. But let's go through some of the scenes. In general, I would say one of the most important things when you shoot with natural light is negative fill. And the simple reason is that natural light has a tendency to reduce the contrast in the actors' faces, especially if it's heavily diffused through like clouds or fog, like in this example. And to kind of conquer that, you can see that they built a few 12x12 butterflies behind the camera with slightly transparent black net material. I assume that this doesn't do too much to the image, as it's reducing the light by maybe half a stop, max I would say, but it seems to be enough in this situation. But in other situations, you just have to use more negative fill. In these few shots, it's also very interesting how much haze they used, because it's like blowing away constantly. They had to use a lot of haze during the whole shoot, and I really don't want to know how much this cost. Talking about negative fill, here are some more examples of negative fill that you can find in these 2 scenes. It looks complicated, but most of the time all you want is contrast in the actors' faces or in the object that you can see in the frame. So usually what they do is they're just blocking off light from a 90-degree angle. So if the camera is right here, they're just blocking it off from the right side or from the left side. In this example, they are blocking the backlight, so there's not so much light hitting the actor's frontal from the back. Next up is this scene. It's a very easy to execute, but very good looking lighting setup. And sometimes easier is just better. We've all done this a million times, but all you need is a lamp just outside the window. You set it to daylight and you position the actor in a 90-degree angle to the light. In this case, they shaped the light a bit by using these white reflectors that you can see in the frame. I assume they wanted to have a little bit more light level on the floor, as the whole focus of the scene is on the carpet here. So yeah, they just made sure that the carpet has enough light. What is also really interesting are these city scenes that they shot outside, as they seem to shoot them with completely natural light. Again, you can see that in these situations, they try to work with negative fill as much as possible to get a little bit of contrast and blacks back into the image. For example, on the left side of this frame here, you can see that this might be actually a huge negative fill wall. Same here, the background was just set extended later in VFX. Okay guys, as I promised, it's time to have a look at some special shots of the movie. This one is a really cool one, because to shoot the city at night, they had to mount multiple lantern lights on top of the corridors and streets. The white balance of these lights seems to be more towards 60-100 Kelvin, while practical remain warmer tones, creating the classic orange and teal look. Most of the times, a top light at night is all you need to have this dramatic and nice look. I'm saying this almost in every video, but I'm really convinced that if you only have one light, maybe go for a top light. It just looks great. Also here we can see what I've been talking about earlier. This is something that Blaschke already had tried in The Northman to make sure that the moon is actually far away enough. And this is a picture of the mirror that they used. This is how it looks. It's like a special construction that just mimics moonlight. And then there are also some VFX shots, like this boat shot where they have never been in actual water. It takes a lot of effort in VFX to get this look extremely realistic, but also a lot of effort in filming already. You can see that there's a huge lantern-like softbox, which is like extending over the whole boat. And they have negative fill on the left side, a huge chroma key on the back, a backlight that is acting as the moonlight. And then they also had to make sure that the snow is realistic enough. So they had to blow in real snow. This, funny enough, looks like it's not even in a studio. It's more like outside on a big stage, because people are actually wearing jackets. So maybe this was even outside. I'm not sure. Maybe it's also a studio. In any case, if you like this video, please consider watching this one next. It's like a little breakdown of the movie Conclave that I did a couple of months ago. It's super fun doing these little breakouts. I'm learning a lot for myself as well by doing this. And I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments and subscribe to this YouTube channel. See you next time.